So let's just get started. I kind of want to start off a little differently with a poem. I want to recite to you a poem. Calm down, calm down. You're not in a poetic class, but I just want to get you thinking. So, a tiger met a lion while drinking by the pool. Said the tiger to the lion, "Why do you roar like such a fool?" "Roaring isn't foolish," said the lion with a twinkle in his eye. "They call me the king of beasts, and it pays to advertise." A rabbit overheard them talking and ran home like a streak. He thought, "I'm going to try that lion's trick," but his roar was just a squeak. A fox had his dinner later in the woods. Moral of the story, it doesn't pay to advertise unless you've got the goods. Why are you all here today? We're here to get the goods, right? This class is about getting the goods. Now I'm going to give you some goods today, some. But then this class is going to continue talking about the goods. And I'm sure you'll use this tape, which, great. You'll use this training tape, and more people will get the goods. So let's share what we have today. Please share with me as well. The first slide I want to throw about is it worth it? How do you all know that all the efforts you put forth are worth it? The first question we asked ourselves all the time is, I can do it. So you see this program, you see the CEDO team, observations. You ask yourself, can I do it? How many of you feel like you can do it? How many of you are doing it now? We're doing it now, right? So that's a yes. So that's a yes. That's self-efficacy. You feel like, yes, I can do it. Second question, will it work? Is it working? Does it work? Works, huh? Okay. So it works. Last question. Is it worth it? That's what we have to get through to some of the people we work with. And when we educate people on the safe behaviors on the job site, that's what we have to show them, right? That it's worth it. Is it worth it? Damn straight it's worth it, right? So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about why it's worth it. And I'm going to give you some fun examples. So we're going to have fun today. Okay, so first, I want to show you my objectives so that you have an idea of what I am going to give you today. And then we'll expand upon it as we grow. The first thing is I'm going to define people-based safety. We think we know the definition, and many of us do. But I'm going to add a little bit of pieces to it. Then I'm going to define the parts of human performance that we're using within people-based safety. So it's not going to be an all-out HPI training, but we're going to get some real nuggets. And I suggest, Tim, you put on a follow-up, a to-be-continued HPI training. I'm also going to discuss the enhancements to people-based safety. What have I done since I've been here? Good question. Then we're going to demonstrate the standardized people-based safety checklist. We're going to look at positive versus negative communication. We had a great conversation yesterday in our CEDO meeting. This was one of our topics, so I want to bring it out here today. Then we're going to demonstrate the observation process, and you have some examples that we're going to look at. So I'm going to kind of give that to you a little bit, but I'm going to touch on it. And then we're going to identify some value-added results. That wonderful statement of closing the loop. How are we going to use this data? What are we doing with it? Okay? All right. All right, so Tucker, I want to start with your quote from yesterday. None of us in this room have the same sphere of acceptable risk. Wonderful quote. None of us. All of us experience risk differently. We see it differently. We have a threshold. We have a threshold of what we see as risky and what we don't see as risky. What about this picture? Isn't this exhilarating? Well, he's having a great time, but he's not, right? This character over here, this is actually one of my PBS observers out in Australia. He's an American. He started on the Dulles Project in Washington, D.C., and he sent me this picture. And I said, Caleb, doesn't this kind of go against being a safety person? He said, it was fun. Like, okay. But what do we tell when we talk about risk? This is different. These folks have a different thought process of risk. Different people have different mindsets, right? So, he's thinking this is going to be a fun racetrack. She's thinking, dear God, get me out of the car. Right? So we all have these different mindsets, especially when it comes to risk. You step out there on the job site, you're watching somebody do their job task, and maybe they've done it 1,000,000 times before. Do they always notice the risks in what they're doing? Nah, you get so good at it, you forget what you're doing, don't you? Ever sit in your car, driving in rush hour traffic, and everyone around you is going 70 miles per hour, and sit there and think to yourself, oh my Lord, I'm in this big piece of machinery, I'm going pretty quick, everyone around me is going quick. Ever sit there and think about it? Think about what you're really doing? Because we forget the risks around us. And then you look over and someone's texting. They have this thing, the phone, and yeah. So let's start with defining people-based safety, okay? First, people-based safety is an extension and evolution of behavior-based safety. How many of you remember behavior-based safety when it first came out? Behavior-based safety was coined in the late 1978-79, behavior-based safety, BBS, okay? People-based safety came out when they started thinking about the person, because the person directly affects your behavior, right? So that's number one. That's where we bring in the people, the person part of our behavior. Driving. How many of you had a speeding ticket lately? My hand is not up. I've been really good. Yes? Has it affected your behavior? So it's affected your behavior, good and bad, and it's affected your behavior for a while. For a while, right. Doesn't stick with you. But it affects you for that little chance. How many of you, if you see blue lights, immediately change your behavior? Even if you're not speeding. You look down, you check your belt, you do all kinds of things, right? Yeah, absolutely. It can be 3 miles up, and that's classical conditioning, because we are trained when we see a police officer, it's not a positive thing. Have you ever had one knock on your window and say, ma'am, that was wonderful driving back there. I want to give you a voucher off for your next ticket. Here you go. Ever had that? No, I haven't either. I'm waiting until someone says, yes, it happened just the other day. No. So our behavior is guided by our past experiences and by the consequences we feel we may experience, okay? So we'll talk about that. Hold on to that. Let's talk about the components of people-based safety. There's acting, coaching, thinking, seeing. Now I'm going to touch on those in a little bit more detail in a second. But these are the 4 main components of people-based safety. And we use it to actively care for ourselves and others. If I want you walking out of this room with anything, I want you walking out with the importance of this program is the communication. And we talked about that yesterday, right, Tucker? The importance of this program is communicating with each other, opening up the door, learning the safe behaviors that I might not even recognize that that's a safe behavior. I might not know that's the way I should be doing it. So this program allows people to learn from each other and actively care for each other and those around. That's what we do. That to me is this observational program. Whether you call it CETO, whether you call it people-based safety. Out in Australia, they call it the Achievables. They spell it's achievable, but it's B-U-L-L. They have a big bull on their shirt. It's awesome. And so everyone has their own name. No matter what you call it, it's the same thing. We are observing each other to keep each other safe. So that's what I really want you holding on to. We coach each other. How many of you are really good at coaching people? Yeah? How many of you feel like when you've had some negative experiences with coaching, you might not get that positive reaction? Anybody get that sometimes? If it's your family, for sure, right? Your family, they can kind of bite your head off a little bit. And I'm sure some of you have gotten a little bit of a negative reaction when you've tried to coach somebody. That's only natural, because it's hard for us as adults to always receive the necessary feedback we need, isn't it? Especially if it's something we've been doing for year after year after year, and now somebody's going to come up and tell me I'm doing it wrong or I'm not doing it safely. Where can I hit you first, right? So we've got to be very careful with that conversation and feedback process. And you guys are going to talk about that later, and I'll touch on it again. But coaching is a talent. And being able to receive it is a talent as well, because it's hard. It's hard to receive feedback. Personal experiences. How about making it personal? That's a pretty big word, isn't it? Making it personal. When you can go up to somebody and say, hey, let me tell you my story. Let me tell you why I don't do it that way anymore. When you make it personal. You know, it's not an example you've pulled out of the sky. It's something that's happened to you or happened to a friend of yours. You know, and then you can tell that story, making it personal. We've got a lot of professionals that travel around the world with their story, and they tell their story. And some of them are unbelievable, and they make it personal. Last, we all behave based on our previous knowledge and understanding the task at hand. But I want you to carry one word, previous knowledge. What we did back then, that guides us to today. Our past experience, our expertise, our knowledge. The other thing I want to talk about is empowerment. How many of you feel empowered? You feel like you have a choice in what you do? Yeah, you all do. You all are part of this team, or want to be part of this team and run this team and keep this team together. That's empowerment, feeling empowered for what you do. How many of you are success seekers? You look for the success. I used to teach college. I taught at Virginia Tech. The first class I ever taught, I had 250 students. I had the entire Virginia Tech football team, and the topic was human sexuality. Just envision it for just a minute. Just a second, what utter hell that was. And I remember I asked the class, I said, how many of you are success seekers? You know, mind you, these are freshmen to seniors. It's human sexuality, so I think it was an elective. The fact that everyone took it was just shocking to me. And I'm asking, how many, and no hands are going up. And so I'm one of those that walk around the room, so I'm contained right here. I'm contained. I won't come bother you. But I'd walk around the room and I'd say, are you a success seeker? No. Listen, I'm just here to get an A so I can improve my GPA. Well, good, you answered my question. You're not a success seeker. Success seekers are trying to find how they can improve the situation. You're a failure avoider. You just want to avoid the F, right? So success seekers. What about self-persuasion and self-accountability? That means that we want to talk to ourselves. How many of you talk to yourself? Tim and I were driving down the street and saw a guy clearly talking to himself. Clearly, he had a bathrobe on, might have had slippers. There could have been someone out looking for him. But nevertheless, he was having a full-fledged conversation with himself. Was that you? Was it really?
Oh, yeah, he does.
It's beautiful, though. If you can, it makes me feel a little bit better about myself. That's amazing. So how many of you do it? Oh, all the time. We should talk with your neighbor. He's probably talking to himself right now. You have that self-talk. What about before you do something silly or at risk? Yeah? Yep. You say to yourself, ugh, probably shouldn't do this. What makes you do that? What makes you stop and say that? A near miss? A near miss? What'd you say? You know what you're about to do is going to be wrong. Absolutely. You question yourself. Did we learn that? Is it because we're part of this team? Why do we do that? Past experience. Oh. Maybe we got hurt. Yes. That's a good question. This time we might. Yes. Okay. Lessons learned from people around us. And I also think that being part of a safety team and being in the jobs that you all are in, constantly, actively caring for each other, you start to think, even if you're a room by yourself, you think to yourself, the headlines read, Global PBS HPI manager stood on chair to change light bulb, broke neck when she fell. I don't want that headline in the newspaper. You know, I'm not certain I really want that, right? Because, you know, even when people aren't watching, you have to hold yourself accountable.